Hello, everyone, and welcome to the hustings for the Vice President for Access and Academic Affairs as part of the Student Union election for the sabbatical officers for next year. I am Robert McElraith. I use he, him pronouns, and I'll be chairing this hustings. This will involve me questioning both the candidates about their manifestos based on reading them earlier. I have personal questions for each of them, and I will also be putting some of your questions to them, which the SU has kindly provided me with. Just to go over some of the rules of this hustings with the candidates, you will each be given 1 minute time to listen to me asking the questions and then 1 minute time to answer them, at which point I will mute you so we can be very tight on the time scale and then move on to your rival candidate. At the beginning, we will have a 2-minute introduction from both of you where you can lay out your personal platforms and why you have chosen to run for this position. To everyone who is watching at home, this election will open for voting on Tuesday at 8 a.m. and then it will close on Thursday, that's the 11th of February, at 6 p.m. with the results announced at 9. And you can find more information on the SU website, which is oxfordsu.org. Okay, so if we're all okay with the rules, I would like to hand over now to Connie to give your introduction. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Connie. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a third year PPS at UNIF. I'm running to be your VP Access and Academic Affairs for the 2021 to 22 academic year. I'm a first generation student from Liverpool, and the way that these two factors have shaped my identity has fostered a passion for access at all levels of the university. The central theme of my platform is the demand for an Oxford for all. To demand an Oxford for all is to demand an Oxford that is democratic, just, and an environment in which every member of the university can flourish. This will require unity and solidarity between all students and staff, fostered by an SU that is willing to take on those in positions of power to create an Oxford that we wish to see. In order to create an Oxford for all, I will use my excellent communication and lobbying skills to hold the university to account on all things access. Our Oxford experiences tend to differ on account of our college. If elected, I will lobby for a levelling up of intercollegiate provisions. I will create a Know Your Rights campaign to help all students to take on their colleges when they consider themselves to be at the sharp end of this disparity. An area that I've found to be lacking from the current discourse on access and accessibility is postgraduate access. I will aim to rectify this. I will work with the VP graduates to create an Applying to Oxford for Postgraduate Study Guide in order to demystify the currently opaque process. I will also lobby the university to make clearer external funding opportunities. Everyone, regardless of background, deserves to be able to access postgraduate study should they so desire. The elephant in the room is the COVID-19 pandemic. If elected, I will push for provisions to be put into place so that all students get the outcomes that they deserve. This will include lobbying for a safety net for all students whose FHS teaching has been affected by the pandemic, and upward scaling of coursework that is unable to be produced at pre-pandemic standards. I hope that this brief speech has given you the confidence that I'm the best candidate for this role, and I hope that you will put your faith in me in voting for when voting for VP Access and Academic Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. And now I'd like to hand over to Safa for your introduction. You also have 2 minutes.
Hi, so I'm Safa. I'm a third year historian at Exeter and I use she, they pronouns. I'm running for this role because I would really fight for students' academic needs, taking everything that I've been able to learn from my access work, both within and outside of college, as well as my current role as co-chair of the SU Class Act campaign, to really push for the changes that I've so desperately wanted to see ever since arriving at Oxford. Key for me would be a re-envisioning academic accessibility to take into account student welfare and needs much more, and to make sure that how students are examined as well as course content is decided on a much more democratic and representative way through kind of reviews of university policies and much more student-led working groups. This issue is especially pressing given the university's current failure to follow students' demands for the very necessary safety nets, and this will continue to be an issue even in 2022. Students don't just want a leg up or a foot in foot in the door. Every student here wants to be able to thrive and belong. And on a broader note, I would like to facilitate a lot more solidarity between different student campaigns and indeed between staff and students to make sure that students' voices are meaningfully represented and amplified when it comes to the big issues, which are at the root of a lot of these things, like equalising material disparities between colleges and, of course, fighting the increasing commodification of education. My first-hand experience in student activism and coming from a working class state school background myself really helps me to understand the roots of these issues and makes me qualified to educate students on their rights so that they can use their voice to carve out a place for themselves at Oxford.
Thank you very much, Safa. We will now move on to some of your questions from the Oxford community, which I will ask the candidates. We'll be starting with Connie for the answers because we'll be going alphabetically based on the candidates' first names. Okay, so our first question then is, would you like to see any changes in the university's application process in order to level the playing field for applicants? As I said, Connie, you're going first and you have 1 minute.
Yes, I would like to see changes in the application process, and I would like the application process to contain more contextualized data. I know that this is happening at the minute with DPhils, in that there is a trial group of subjects that are taking in more contextualized factors when considering students for graduate study, which I think is fantastic. And I know that at the same time, contextualized data is being taken more into account with regard to undergraduate study, for example, with the Opportunity Oxford programme. However, I think we need to be extremely careful when lobbying for these things that they don't come with a caveat. For example, the Opportunity Oxford programme, which does fantastically take into account this contextualised data, also requires students to take on a 2-week summer school that their more privileged counterparts don't have to take on. And it's unfair that these students that the university deems to be disadvantaged is being made to take on a lot more labour to gain their place at Oxford than other students who happen to come from more privileged backgrounds. Therefore, I think that when the SU is lobbying for changes to the admissions process, for example, with contextualised data, it's very important that we push for there to be a lack of a caveat on these students being able to gain their place at the university.
Thank you very much, Connie. Safa, you also have 1 minute to answer that question.
Yeah, so just like Connie, there's definitely a lot of changes that I think can be made towards the application process. I think one key thing is kind of because of the college system, there's not a lot of centralised resources about application. And I think, you know, for someone who doesn't understand Oxford, you don't know where to look for this information. And I think in this role and like being in the SU is a really good way to put resources together, kind of have a more centralised place for prospective students to go to, and just really use kind of the website, like the SU website, social media, to demystify the whole process. And I think definitely just kind of like re-envisioning what access means for the university. I think it's really easy for Oxford admission tutors to say that, oh, you know, by the time students get here, it's already too late to equalise a lot of the things that have happened throughout education. And I think Oxford should know that it has the resources to be able to intervene in schools much earlier on and actually take its access outside and, you know, go up north, go to different communities from early on and kind of let students know that this is an option.
Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to our second question from Oxford students, which is, what access projects that you have had personal involvement in are you most proud of? Again, we'll start with you, Connie, and again, you have 1 minute.
So although I can't take any credit for being any sort of founding member in this, I worked as an ambassador on the Opportunity Oxford summer school in September and October. And although that may sound like a menial role, I think that I did really well in creating a positive atmosphere and instilling positivity with regards to the Oxford experience into many of the students. I think the thing that I'm most proud of in that role is that a lot of the students were disgruntled about the way that they were treated and about the way that they'd been undercompensated for giving up many months of work to perform extra labour to gain their place at university. And I was very proactive in speaking to the coordinator of the programme, Dr. Andrew Bell, and facilitating meetings between the students who were disgruntled and the leadership of the programme, ensuring that those in charge of the programme were being held accountable for their actions. And it seemed like these people were kind of out of touch with the project, and I'm very happy that I put steps in place to create meetings, which has gone on to become a focus group on the programme. And if elected in this role, I'd like to still be instrumental in ensuring that the focus group continues and facilitating these kind of discussions between those who make decisions on access and those who are predominantly affected by those decisions.
Thank you, Connie. Safa, would you like to take 1 minute now to answer that same question?
So for me, it would definitely be the role I've been able to take on as co-chair of the SU Class Act campaign, which basically represents students from working class backgrounds at the university. And I think there's been a lot of great things we've done, such as, you know, I'm really proud of a lot of the campaigns we did in the summer with kind of campaigning for estranged students' rights and making sure that estranged students were given, you know, affordable vacation residence and other like facilities like that throughout the summer vacation, and even throughout the virtual Trinity term, because a lot of these students didn't have homes to go through during the pandemic. And another thing I'm like very proud of that I was able to do in this role is very early on in the kind of on the morning of the A-level fiasco that occurred when the kind of teacher assessed grades were got rid of and contextualized and really impacted state school students. The statement that I put out as co-chair of this campaign was actually incorporated into the official SU policy, and that's what the current VP that I'm running for actually was able to use to lobby the university in his meeting, and I hope I played a part in the decision that many colleges eventually took.
Thank you very much, Safa. So we'll now move on to the tailored questions that I have for each of you based on reading your manifestos, which I did earlier after you had submitted them. Anyone who would like to read the manifestos of either Connie or Safa can do so online. Again, that's oxfordsu.org, and you can find them there. Okay, so we'll start with you again, Connie. My question for you is this. You've promised to, in your words, ensure the university is a space in which all students feel welcome, something I'm sure we all agree is important. Beyond lobbying the university not to fund groups like Women's Place UK, what practical steps will you take to achieve this goal? You have 1 minute.
So I think this is a very broad question, but I think a lot of the work that is being done to ensure that students feel welcome is done already with lots of different student societies. I'm a firm believer that there's no typical Oxford student, and there's a place for everybody at Oxford. And one of the big things that ensures that there's a place for everyone at Oxford is this whole plethora of student societies that we have at the university. Now, if I were elected to be the VP Access and Academic Affairs, what I'd like to do is to really bring together these societies, creating resources, archiving material, ensuring on an organisational and practical level that all students know that they're able to turn to these societies if needed and find their place at Oxford. Now, I know that this won't solve all of the problems. For example, I know that a lot of students who are from ethnic minority backgrounds feel very out of place at Oxford, not just because it is a predominantly white space, but also because most of our reading list is full of white authors. There are portraits of white people all around the university, and those students don't feel reflected in the university as such. Therefore, I promise to continue to lobby for the decolonisation of all syllabi, not solely by ensuring that there's a diversity of thought on our reading list, but also through the encouragement of the taking down of statues, for example, the statue of Rhodes that still hasn't been taken down, and holding the university to account in ensuring that these policies are made. Like, I know with discussions with the philosophy faculty.
Thank you, Connie. I'm so sorry, I'm going to have to stop you. Thank you. Safa, my question for you, based on your manifesto, is you're proposing some pretty significant reforms that you're suggesting to push for in terms of the structure of the term. For example, you proposed extending into 9th week and supporting the implementation of a reading week. Why have you chosen to pursue these proposals specifically, and how realistic are they?
So I think the reason I've chosen to focus on these proposals is because I think something that a lot of students would agree is that Oxford tends to squeeze a lot of content into like a very short term compared to all other universities in this country. It also means that, you know, in reality, students are actually, it's not as if during the vacation they have a break, they're still doing work, they're just having to do it from home and not having the facilities here that they need. And I think kind of spreading this out more and having things like 3-hour Wednesdays and extending into 9th week would definitely help kind of alleviate stress, and I think do really good things for student welfare and mental health. And in terms of how realistic I think these are, I think a lot of tutors are kind of putting at least meetings, or like, you know, meetings setting up next term, and even content, like even actual classes and other types of content and work is still always being set in 9th week and due in 9th week and also in 4th week. And, you know, it's not as if the tutors are like going home in 8th week as well. And I think because there's already a kind of informal idea of so much work being done in 9th week just from home, away from the resources.
Thank you. I'm going to also have to stop you there. I'm sorry. Thank you both very much for your answers to those questions. I hope they have been helpful for the people at home on making their decision about the preferential vote that they give to either of you. I would like to now thank the candidates very much for taking this time to speak with us today. I'm glad we've been able to keep it civil and to conduct this efficiently. I'd really encourage all of you who have taken the time to watch this to vote when voting does open, as I said, on Tuesday, the 9th of February at 8 AM, and then it closes on Thursday, the 11th of February at 6 PM. It really is worthwhile. Remember that these are sabbatical officers who serve for a year in a paid position and have a real opportunity to influence things for you as students. Thank you again to the candidates, and thank you all for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Connie.